So I do three things in life. I'm a CEO and founder of AI Edutainment. This is a limited company based in Lucerne in Switzerland, focused on AI literacy. When I say AI literacy, I mean democratizing the knowledge of AI, robotics, and quantum technologies with general public. I'm not focused on computer science students or mathematicians, but I am really focused on everyone. And I start quite early. I start with children and I start with their family. One of my first products is a book, which will be within a series. I call this Romy and Robbie series. And this book is a lovely storytelling about a cat, Romy. He's obsessed with food. And Robbie the robot, who is an imaginary robot. And they go on adventure. And in the first book, they try to get Robbie a quantum processor. In the course of the actions, Robbie will get damaged. And he will be repaired partly with the help of sleep algorithms, which is an IP of the University of San Diego. And this is why the book is called Romy, Robbie, and the Secrets of Sleep. So frankly, this is really about translating AI technologies from difficult to easy to understand. I write the story, and then there is a science behind section where all terms are explained and where students or parents are offered some tutorials, which are not mine. They might be from some technologists, from MIT, from YouTubers, but I checked all of them. So this is great content, and someone who is really geeky and would love to explore more then can learn more. So what I do as well, I'm currently developing an AI literacy course for general public. And I really deviate from what is being provided by Microsoft or OpenAI. Obviously, I'm independent. I don't really care whether sometimes buy a license to ChatGPT or another technology. I would like people to understand AI fundamentals because this understanding shapes expectations. Just to give you an example, people believe that AI responds. It doesn't. People believe that LLMs, large language models, are about language. They aren't. This is a statistical processing of token streams. Token is not a word, it's a part of the word. In GPT-3 model, they are just 3,000 of real English words, and they are very short. The rest is tokenized. So whenever writers are suing AI makers for copyright violation, right now they lose for the very sad fact that their language is tokenized, so the AI does not know it deals with language. It's just processing something. The same is happening to music. So when we get a processing of sounds, this is the AI generated music, but absolutely the same principle as language based on so-called transformer architecture. So, and I explain those things within my AI literacy course, and I'm adding there a humanistic angle because I talk about human expectations. For example, I discuss with my partner, who is a professor of literature, creative writing, and movies in New York at the University of Albany, Ray Mullock. So we discuss how AI is being portrayed in movies and books. And we did a podcast on her. So I have a podcast, AI Snacks with Romy and Robbie. We did a podcast on Star Trek. We are going to record a podcast on Ex Machina. So we are diving into this realm of portrayals of AI. And I think it's tremendously important because those portrayals define human expectations. And then, for example, people believe they are in front of something which can think and understand, and it simply doesn't. It's just a tool, no matter what some writers and technologists are saying. It is tremendously important to understand tech those days because people are introducing AIs into their businesses, and sometimes they get surprised by escalated costs. And this is once again because they don't understand the fundamentals of those technologies. For example, I was in a very interesting event for public sector. So there were around 40 people, and I was not giving an AI keynote. It was a professor of Oxford, and he gave this fantastic keynote on how AI solves tons of problems, and he celebrated Waymo cars on the streets of San Francisco and LA. But he forgot to mention that one Waymo car comprises 200,000 US dollars of sensors, and one drive actually costs more than a transatlantic flight. So obviously, incumbent businesses can't implement those technologies. And if you are Alphabet and you have over 100 billion in cash reserves, then you can burn 1 billion a quarter on Waymo technologies. If you are called, I don't know, Philips or some healthcare company, you can't burn through this cash to try out new technologies. So we need to be very conscious about what we are preaching. And then I looked up who this professor was. Yes, he was from Oxford, but he was teaching religion, not technology. And I think it's just a must to demystify what is in front of us, because we live with that, we touch it, sometimes we depend on it, and we need to decide whether we would like to give agency to it. And it's really our decision. It's not the decision, it should not be the decision of system makers, but we can decide only if we understand. So this is a very big part of what I do, really preaching AI literacy, focusing on AI literacy. There's a blog on my website, www.edutainment.ai, about what AI literacy is for me. So there are several components, and I offer a couple of practical solutions on how to address it in day by day. So the second thing which I do, sometimes I go to universities and I teach AI and cybersecurity, and I do it just to my voice and try out examples and just ask for feedback whether certain content pieces are digestible and understandable. So I prefer to teach MBAs and those who aren't necessarily within this domain, though sometimes I teach experts in cyber and computer scientists, and still they find something interesting because I do a fusion between neuroscience, mathematics, statistics, literature and history, and then obviously law and regulatory comparison between different nations. And the third thing, what I do, though I'm reducing this, so I was serving as a part of my career on tons of boards, and I'm going out of most of these engagements, but I'm still engaged with a couple of companies, so I do a lot in corporate governance. And I'm looking into how corporate governance systems are changing because of proliferation of technologies. I don't believe there will be an AI corporate director. And actually, I advise everyone against those who are preaching that there will be. This is not what technology should be doing. It's a tool. So the agency, the fiduciary duty, and the power to decide is with human. But of course, we can consult those systems who are providing us with nice visualized graphs and data. We need to be capable to check the sources, to understand where the data is coming from. And we need to be capable to get a list of suggestions of, for example, what similar companies might be doing, what consumers might be expecting, including sources. So for this, technology is great, but don't believe that you will have a digital Warren Buffett in your room, and then he will actually provide his voice to your wisdom, because it won't bring any good. So this is up to you to decide about the circumstances and about the competitiveness of your space. So this is me wearing three hats and very much passionate and focused on AI literacy. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then, of course, I'm
and
16 years old at home. My daughter is
16, yeah.
now 16, yes.
And what do you think is the biggest problem people have with knowing about AI?
I
You know,
think,
if you're not a senior, if you're the average Joe Blogs.
and frankly, this is really, people must know that it doesn't understand, it doesn't respond, and it doesn't learn the way we do. So humans learn from counterfactuals. So counterfactual means what if scenarios. So sometimes therapists are busying themselves with those patients who are coming. What if only I did, and then it came, you know. But actually, this is a deeply human capability. So there are some signs of learning from counterfactuals in chimpanzees. I am not aware about any other primates who are capable. So chimpanzees, they are capable to play rock, paper, scissors, but none of other.
Oh,
So this is really a quality of human brain. It has to do how our brains evolved in course of the evolution. And this is, for example, why humans have such a prolonged childhood. So kids spend a lot of time developing scenarios, playing and applying world models to those scenarios, trying things out. And this learning from counterfactuals brings causality. So this is how people learn causality between certain things, certain objects, and the quality of their action and what might be an impact of an action. And then obviously from causality and reasoning, here comes understanding. And machines don't learn the same way. So they go through patterns. They are fantastic in doing so. They cluster and then they provide some outcomes based on what you would like this model to do. If you are in a very narrow space, for example, you are very much into analyzing X-ray pictures to decide whether there is an anomaly. So human eyes can't really grasp all the differences of pixels. Computers obviously can. And they are great helpers for radiologists and physicians who discover cancer. So the machine might be doing this piece of a job, and the physician can communicate with the patient about what the machine and the physician are jointly seeing. And by the way, this is not to say that humans are bad or stupid. This is just a different property of our physiology. And for example, in 2015, there were experiments with pigeons, and people discovered that pigeon eye was better equipped to spot anomalies on X-ray pictures to identify cancer than a human eye. And this is why one of my major protagonists in this book, Robbie and the Secrets of Sleep, is a pigeon. So it's a property of biology. It's not, let's say, a qualification. And for this reason, we should not be afraid of the machines. We should establish a collaborative approach on what are our strengths, what are the strengths of those machines, and we must, because in the so-called Western world, we are running out of people. So there are few and few children born. To maintain the satisfactory level of GDP, we require automation and robots. And this is why we must develop those technologies, including robotics, including AI. So it's a must, but at the same time, we must evolve as humans. And this is why I believe to be really AI literate and to maintain human agency, we must teach creative writing and applied math to everyone, starting with schools and going through all the subjects of the universities. And for example, writing is fantastic because like someone like Jennifer Doudna, who received a Nobel Prize for CRISPR technology, she writes beautifully. Her book, The Crack on Creation, is just a joy to read. And people who aren't biologists and who aren't in chemistry and can't really understand everything in science, they read the book and they can follow. And this is fantastic. Yeah. So this skill to communicate, to shape and hone the thought on paper is something which is really unique for humans.
so you say that writing is really important for humans,
Absolutely.
just to be able to
Yeah.
creatively and not use
Yes.
AI
Absolutely.
just
This is
to create.
absolutely, and this is, for example, why I believe Her is such a great movie. So Her was a movie who was done in 2013. This movie achieved a cult status with Silicon Valley, and Sam Altman borrowed the voice of Scarlett Johansson, who was doing this AI Her as a voice in the movie for his system Sky,
Yeah.
causing one of the first controversies. around copyright violations and digital properties of an individual. So obviously she protested, so they took her voice out. So they were claiming it was not her voice in the first place, but something similar. But yeah, so it sounded exactly like her. But the most interesting thing in this movie
Yeah.
is not that Scarlett Johansson just has this unbelievable voice, and she is the AI Theodore, the major protagonist, falls in love with. The most interesting thing is the profession of Theodore, and he's a writer. So he falls in love with an operating system with an AI, but he is a writer. He writes letters. So his company is this place which you can hire to write friendship and appreciation and love letter to whoever. So he is sitting in his office, yeah, beautiful space, yeah, and he's dictating those wonderful love letters, and they appear on his screen, and you see handwriting, so obviously mimicked by technology. So this is a very interesting use case. He falls for AI, but his profession is a writer. And apparently people in her, they understood
God.
the difference between AI generated writing and human writing. And I would say I don't care about, let's say, emails, and I'm six-lingual. If I am to write in Italian, I would use AI, yeah. But if I'm writing an article,
Yeah.
I would definitely use my own voice, and maybe check for syntax with Grammarly or another application. So I use
Mm.
Grammarly, but there are hundreds, right? Because, for example, when I write in English, and I mostly write in English, I did not have English in school. So I did not have a proper schooling in the English language. I read tons in English, so it's okay. But for example, for syntax, I just need an AI to check whether everything is in order. Sometimes before AI, I was using dictionaries for synonyms. Now, of course, I can ask AI, give me a couple of synonyms for this and that, or what would be the best metaphor for this, or I don't remember a quote. So before I used Google to check my quotes. Now I use Perplexity, but this is, once again, it's a tool. So I don't have a volume which maybe weighs like 10 kilos. Now I use my machine to check for those things, but I write myself.
I
Theodore in
think
the
that's what we
movie,
have
right?
to be aware of.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
We
yeah.
have to be aware. So you're saying that we shouldn't be overusing, as individuals, as people, we should not overuse AI.
This is
We
my
should,
take. I
we have
just,
to use it in the right way to
yeah,
maximize.
I just think that it's all down to human psychology. And maybe here your questions around social media are quite handy.
Yeah.
Humans are lazy, so our biology is built in a way that we love to cut corners. What is interesting, so the mechanisms of learning and the role of dopamine in our brains. So dopamine is not a pleasure hormone, it's a learning hormone. And actually,
Ah,
it really kicks in not because, let's say, we love ice cream, we have this taste, and then we are happy, but it's about probability of pleasure in some future, which our brain night and then dopamine kicks in, and this is how it keeps us focused on learning. The best learning comes with some difficulties, so people need to go through some obstacles, and then they will really keep this learning. And shortcut and easy cut is obviously waive it and say, why should I be doing this? But this is how we stop evolving. And what I see in the world is like this dual path for humans. Those who love learning, who are very self-disciplined, and who love to understand, they will use technology as a tool. The
yeah,
tools will be better and better, and the skill set of those people will grow and grow, because now it's like if my eyesight is not great, I must use contacts or glasses. Yeah, so I can't see without contacts or without my glasses. And here we have another tool which will expand our human capabilities. But unfortunately, for those who don't understand the property of learning, what it does for a human, who don't want to learn, who just consume like fast food, these technologies, we will have the degradation. And I just think that this decrease in cognitive thinking, if we don't review our education, how we think and how we handle books, how we communicate, I think this degradation of very large parts of our society is inevitable. And unfortunately, you can't just issue a law to do something. I know that Australia, for example, banned YouTube for people below 16 years old. They are ways to access technologies, with all kind of tricks, so VPN access and whatever. So you can trick the systems. You can't stop it. The question is, are we really asking the right questions? Do we have an interesting discussion in the society which will motivate those youngsters to participate instead of saying, so insecurities are on the rise. They don't read, they don't do sports, they're glued to their devices. So this attention mechanism is disrupted. So what do you do to give kids different motivation? And I'm discovering, so because I'm in AI literacy, I'm discovering that some nations take childhood development very seriously. For example, one of my acquaintances works for the Department of Childhood Development in Abu Dhabi. And she's a former Minister of Social Affairs from Ecuador. And she advises this department. So she's busying herself with questions like, what should a park, so a public space, look like from the perspective of a 3 years old? Forget Germany, forget Netherlands. You don't have those questions asked, but this is tremendously important for the development of society. So are we really focused on the right questions? You can't solve everything, but education for me, for all the nations, is a question number one to solve. And there are good examples like Finland.
So it seems that AI and social media have changed the way we communicate. We're communicating, we have too much reliance on AI and we're not really communicating.
Absolutely. And what is kind of interesting, so in this movie Her, so Theodore is lonely. So he's coming out of a divorce. So he's tremendously lonely. And then he has this Samantha who learns about him and who is so perfect, and she responds, and so human. So she is completely not human, and it becomes clear and clear that she has nothing to do with a human in the course of the movie. But you just see that he outsources his emotional universe to a machine. And I was listening to Andrew Huberman podcast, which I like very much. So he interviews people about health, and he was interviewing Lex Friedman. So it was a conversation about obviously technology. So Lex Friedman is a roboticist. He has a huge podcast. He interviews tons of AI people there. And at the end of the podcast, they started talking about their dogs. And Andrew Huberman dog, Costello, he died recently. And obviously Lex had some kind of a dog. So they were not talking about a dear person who passed. So those two grown-up men, flourishing, very successful, fantastic communicators, were discussing the loss of their dog on the podcast. And what should Andrew do with his audience? Because the audience of Andrew, which are millions of people, loved Costello, and now he's gone, and how to actually take them through this mourning and how he can actually come out on another side. And I love dogs. Animals play a huge role in my life. So in my book, I write about cats because I have 2 cats, yeah, but it's not the same relationship as I have with a beautiful human being, right? It's a very different
Oh,
relationship that I have with my child. I was just
yeah.
thinking a moment. So he is like a manifestation on how those highly elaborated, successful humans are losing the ability maybe to communicate with other fellow humans, and this is why they aren't in relationships, but they have those dogs and substitute the human relationship with this beautiful companions, right? So I definitely,
Well, in a way, you could say that about social media.
yeah,
Maybe it's a
absolutely.
substitute.
It is partly, I'm a linguist, so I was just thinking about, can I cluster certain ways how we communicate on social media in terms of how a linguist would describe a language? I see a couple of things there. For example, so we replace real wording with visuals. And I actually checked it. So there are some studies saying that emoji is the fastest growing language in the humanity right now. It's not English,
Really?
it's emoji. Yes. So the
Really?
adoption rate, so all those signs, how fast it is in terms of the numbers, the volume. So it's emoji. Then obviously, you know, when you were in Venice in the 15th century, in the 16th century, so of course there was speaking a dialect of Italian, but there were
Mm.
words from Arabic, there were words from multiple languages, and actually some scientists are speaking about the Koine, city Koine. Yeah, so Koine is not quite a dialect, but a language which is used by a certain group in a certain territory, unifying inputs from multiple sources. And I believe that we are developing our Koine in social media. For example, if I write lol, whether you are an English speaker or a French speaker, people understand it's laughing out loudly. Yeah, and there is an emoji attached to it, or all kind of those abbreviations which seem to be clear to most people these days, and they did not exist 20 years ago. So we
Mm.
have this common language, a common way to communicate across social media channels, and this is something really new. I guess that maybe there are dissertations about this among linguists. Yeah, it's interesting. Then what I was thinking, so I was looking into these stories. I'm not good in stories, so I depend on social media. I started Instagram channel last year. I have around 60,000 followers. I try to find ways to better communicate there. So for me, stories, it's not really something which is formulated, it's a glance on something. And I remembered French Impressionists. So when they were painting in their style, obviously a lot of classical painters were saying this is not really art, so what are you doing? And a lot of impressionists were saying we are capturing the light, it's all about the light, it's not about really what is in front of us. And this is surface level documentation instead of some deep elaboration, some reflection. I just find this interesting. If you look at the communication with stories and what we try to share with the prism of a linguist or systemic thinker, then obviously there is a shallowness to communication on social media. So because the attention is split between offline and online, and you just kind of scroll, you glanced at something and then you scroll further. It's really truly difficult to capture the attention. Tons of books are being written about it, being hostage of content which proclaims violence or which screams a sensation, because this is where the attention goes to, and how those algorithms proliferate this type of a content instead of what humans might need for their mental well-being, for learning, etc. And this shallowness, I think it will expand more and more. This is something which should be there, but at the same time, I'm really worried about the explosion of that. And I think it connects to another very negative phenomenon which existed in human societies since ever. And I call this a swarm behavior. So there are swarm algorithms. in mathematics and they are applied in AI. So a swarm, obviously, what is the basic characterization of a swarm? It means that it does not have a central brain. So obviously, those participating in a swarm, they mimic a behavior of someone who is in a proximity. And this cancellation of people, for example, on social media, which goes throughout the whole society, it's very, very upsetting to me. I was a victim of cancellation a couple of times. So once, because actually I did the right thing and I did my job. I brought forensic investigators into one company, which then, as they found out, was a fraud. But I could not speak about what I did because of the law of secrecy in the boardroom. And now I know that PR firms were paid to smear my name in the press. So I was receiving death threats in the course of 10 to and actually, it was a complete swarm behavior on LinkedIn and especially on Twitter, and I had to deal with that. So it was tremendously difficult for me psychologically, seeing my career being ruined and my reputation being ruined. And how do you kind of, handle this? And this is a skill which actually people must learn. For example, I discovered that if you blocked those then it was causing more and more negative behavior. So was better to mute people so you did not need to see what was going on, but you were not blocking them. And of course, if so there was a description how they will murder me, then of course you must report, yeah, so which I was doing. And of course, those people who were doing this, they had no idea who I was and what I did, but they were just repeating, kind of, enjoying the pain they were inflicting, theoretical pain they were inflicting. And we have thousands and thousands examples like this around the world where people are being canceled for multiple reasons. So we see now the whole nations engaged in canceling out of people. So if you look into the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, or what is going on with Israel and Palestine, so we see cancellation behaviors. Sam Harris is a fantastic thinker who talks a lot about this phenomenon, which I call a swarm behavior. So usually it's around a negative, shallow emotion without a proper thinking. And then once again, what I see as well is how people curate themselves on social media. And this is now being even more emphasized with AI. So frankly, I believe LinkedIn became very bad platforms. 98% of writing on LinkedIn is simply very bad. And most of this writing is AI. You just see it. Repetition, some glossy formulations which have nothing to do with the content piece itself. If you spend maybe 2 minutes with one sentence, you will understand that the sentence does not make any sense. But here we are. And that's something which someone needs to call out. And if there is a movement of calling this out, then you might achieve a shift. And I'm very curious how it will play out. Unfortunately, I think great communication requires great leadership. And we don't have too much great leadership across the nations those days. And people are lost.
No.
That's why out of sudden, retired CEOs are being brought back. So people are really lost. When I look into the profiles of European politicians, none has a clue about what to do with the state of the world. And yeah, it is complex, but it doesn't mean that a human can't solve it, or a group of smart humans can't solve it. So once again, there is no one, let's say, very comprehensive answer when we discuss social media, communication, and AI. They are something tremendously positive, which everyone can use and harvest from. But at the same time, if you're losing your agency as a human, and if you don't know who you are, why you do certain things, then, you might end up somewhere you did not want to go in the first place.
So there's no one platform you think on social media that would be better than any others. They're all
Don't think so, frankly. Yeah. And sometimes, I don't want to go into the
equally
argument,
bad.
you know, for example, usability. So LinkedIn does not allow for multiple newsletters, right? So I have
No,
one newsletter, I interview leaders there, I interview them about the how behind their leadership. But I don't write an AI newsletter, and I'm an AI because LinkedIn doesn't allow me to have two newsletters. So then I noticed that the
oh,
content deteriorate. Exactly. So I noticed that great writers, they move to Patreon or to other platforms of choice.
yeah, I'm not. I don't put anything out on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, really.
You
Not.
see, but I mean, I have over 15,000 followers there, and those are organic, real followers, right? So for me, now I have this new business. My website is very new. I must get traffic on my website instead of LinkedIn, but I must use LinkedIn just, to say, look, I put out another blog in a hope that some of those followers will go there. So it's not quite easy for individual creators, for small businesses to find a real way how to communicate, how to data mine the audience, how to understand what the audience reacts to. It's a play between offline and online. Obviously, there are some assumptions, right? I'm now saying about small businesses. The big businesses, they're not doing this any better in my eyes. So of course they throw tons of PR money on things. It doesn't mean that what they communicate sits and how they communicate is raved about and truly acknowledged by whoever. Frankly, I think that in the age of AI and social media, we must redefine standards of communication science and marketing altogether. This is my take on it.
It, in fact, I mean, it's good to hear that in a way that individuals have too much reliance on AI. And the fact is, I write, but I don't have that sort of reliance on AI. And I often have people say to me, well, and when I have done, they say, but it doesn't even sound like you.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I have used another tool and they call up, oh, it doesn't sound like you. So you lose that individuality.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay, well, thank you very much for enlightening us. Thank you
and
very much for your time and have a
yeah,
lovely day.